Good afternoon, guys. I'm just going to be explaining and discussing my workplace conflict presentation. I'm going to be going more into in depth into this conflict, talking about the conflict styles, the parties involved, what I did, what I could have did differently, what was done well, what was not done well, and the communication standpoint between me and all the other parties involved. Now, this workplace conflict was a conflict that I was a part of. It was an incident between me and the customer while I was working at Taco Bell, my sophomore and junior years in high school. This conflict I would describe as it was a struggle between me and the customer while I was working the register. We had a disagreement over the transactional exchange and the style of the parties involved were me, a general manager, my supervisor, who was a golfer, and the customer who was a team captain. Now, I I explain myself as a general manager because a general manager has strengths in listening and settling conflicts, and their ideal situations are high emotional conflicts. As for the assessment of the conflict styles of my supervisor, he was a golfer just by, he was triggered by the customer's aggressive and condescending tone. His ideal situations are small, day to day conflicts that are inconsequential. And, supervisors tend to lead by example and just avoid all conflict situations. And as with the customer was a team captain. He was triggered by his perspective of me being unprofessional and lacking respect for him, but that was never my intention or goal. And one of the weaknesses of the team captain is allowing conflicts to escalate. The type of conflict this was is described as a task conflict. And what a task conflict is a conflict that is a disagreement over a certain task or task being performed in the organization or workplace, a business, a company, or anything like that. The customer and I had a dispute about the exchange of a product that we were selling at the time, fast food. The style I believe would have been best to mediate this conflict would have been, as I explained before, the general manager style, because the general manager has strengths in listening and settling conflicts and is also adept at the art of compromising. Now I'm going to be going over the primary issues, positions, and interests of this conflict. And the issue, which is whenever a party is describing why they've taken a certain position, you are basically hearing their issues. Now, he was justifying his position on why he still deserved the product, the food, without paying the full amount for it. And a position, which are tangibles in the conflict. These things are evident, they can easily be seen. And in addition, they can also be seen as the desired outcomes in a conflict. And me and the customer had different, clearly had differing positions about, the good being sold at my establishment at the Taco Bell. He wanted the food without paying the full amount. And as an employee of that establishment, I couldn't just give it away to him. And interests are also tangibles in a conflict. The customer, the customer's reasons and motivations for wanting the food, and he desired it without paying the full amount for it. The hot button issue, the underlying interest, and underlying interest is what is described as the true wants and needs of a person that they are in conflict with, but it's not always evident. And it was evident when I explained to the customer that he did not have, enough money or the correct change for me to put this order in. And that's when he was getting hostile towards me, and he thought I was trying to humiliate him in front of the whole restaurant. He thought I was being too loud, trying to tell his business, and that was never my goal or my intention. I was just simply doing my job as an employee of the restaurant. What I could have done differently in the mediation stage, I definitely could have generated some other options, like taking off items to reduce the total price of the meal. Some compromise could have been had between me and that particular customer on that day in the situation. Looking back at it, I could have handled it a lot better so that it didn't get as escalated as it got to the point. Some examples to mediate the conflict, like I said, to generate some options, but whenever you generate options, you only generate for one issue at a time, because if you try to tackle every issue at once, you run the risk of potentially creating more tension, more unrest, and a feeling of being overwhelmed for the parties involved. Secondly, you can help brainstorm options, better options, or more concise options. So allow the parties, so me and the customer could, and my supervisor could have been brainstormed together to see how we could have handled this situation and make suggestions appropriately. And lastly, just offer up those options that you created if you have created more than one or more than a few, and see if the opposing party wishes to choose for them. What was done well? I believe that I handled the situation good. My supervisor told me I handled it well. I kept my composure throughout the duration of the conflict. Even though I was mad internally or upset, I didn't show it through my body language or my attitude. He told me that everything would be okay. Sometimes there'll be days like that, there'll be customers like that. I was in the back cooling off. We had a little small talk, heart to heart. There's going to be days like that and customers like